Well, hello everyone. One of the knock-on consequences of this COVID-19 emergency is that there has been some disruption to air traffic control services. It's just one of many considerations that business aircraft operators are having to take account of at the moment. And AIN's editor-in-chief, Matt Thurber, who's here with us, has been following this story. Matt, tell us, just how much of a disruption has this been so far, at least in the US?
Hello, Charlie. Well, so far, air traffic control issues related to the virus have hit a few FAA facilities in major metropolitan areas, such as Las Vegas, Chicago, Indianapolis, and New York City. But these events don't always result in the closure of a whole facility, or some even close on a temporary basis. For example, just last night, Teterboro Tower closed from midnight to 6:30 a.m. But that doesn't mean pilots can't operate there. They just have to treat it as a non-tower or so-called uncontrolled airport.
So, Matt, how do operators deal with these situations? And I understand that NBAA recently had some guidance that it shared with operators.
That's right, Charlie. A panel of National Business Aviation Association experts recently held a webinar to discuss air traffic control and ATC 0 and its consequences during the coronavirus pandemic. And they gave some useful advice for aircraft operators. For example, they explained that the FAA has contingency plans to cover how to keep traffic flowing if, let's say, a terminal radar or TRACON facility or a tower or an air route traffic control center needs to be evacuated or part of the facility needs to be shut down. If a tower closes, for example, then traffic can be shifted to the TRACON. If the center shuts down entirely, its traffic can be shifted to TRACONs or even adjacent centers. And towers can take over some low-altitude TRACON traffic while the rest is moved to the overlying center.
So, Matt, you described several scenarios there, and you made reference to ATC 0. What exactly do we mean by ATC 0? Is that just one possible scenario that could happen to operators?
So the FAA has three levels of impact to ATC facilities: limited, alert status, and ATC 0, which is a complete shutdown. Now, the big difference with this coronavirus pandemic is that the effects on the facilities are due to a highly virulent disease that's easy to spread. There's an example of an ATC 0 situation that happened in 2014 when an air route traffic control center in Chicago caught fire, which in fact turned out to be arson. And of course, there was the national shutdown in the United States after the 9/11 attacks, which interestingly seems also to be when the first use of the term ATC 0 came into widespread use. Now, during the pandemic, a portion of a facility may close or the entire facility, but as mentioned, the FAA does have contingency plans in place to fill the gaps, and the FAA does rehearse these contingency plans. Now, one issue related to the pandemic, however, is that it could cause longer outages. A local or state government, for example, might require a 14-day quarantine of a facility after someone tests positive for COVID-19. And that could prevent it from reopening right away, even after the cleaning. So this could require a longer period of shifting traffic to adjacent facilities, and it could mean pilots need to prepare to operate at airports that have become non-tower facilities.
That's interesting. So really the situation we're in now is different from previous occurrences of this. You mentioned the one-off fire at one particular facility. 9/11 was very serious, but another matter altogether. I suppose one of the things that makes this different, as you said, is that not everything is within FAA's control. If a local state governor shuts down people's right of movement, the controllers may not be able to get to work. So it is really quite a new scenario. But for operators, what sort of extra steps do they have to take account of in these circumstances?
That's the key question, Charlie. And the NBAA air traffic experts advise pilots above all to be prepared. Pilots have to plan for departure, for how to safely operate, for example, at non-tower airports, because they might encounter them more often than in the past, and they might not be used to operating there. So generally, the TRACON and center facilities will continue accepting traffic, even in a case where traffic is shifted to an adjacent facility. Now, if the destination's tower is closed, the experts advise keep your ears open and listen for other traffic. Be sure you understand the layout of the airport, the taxi diagrams, and watch for other traffic on the ground and in the air. Pilots flying at Las Vegas, Chicago Midway, and Farmingdale during tower shutdowns have to revert to making radio calls about taxiing, crossing runways, taking off, arriving and landing on the common traffic advisory frequency. Interestingly, at Chicago, some yokel decided to go practice touch-and-go landings right during a tower shutdown in a Cessna 172. Now, this is legal, but as the expert said, it's busy enough with mixed traffic, with airlines, business aircraft, light aircraft, all using the airport. It's really important to exercise good judgment, they said, and don't shoot touch and goes, don't fly practice instrument approaches during these times. One unique feature of the U.S. airspace is that unless the federal government closes the airspace entirely, as was done after the 9/11 attacks, most of the U.S. airspace remains open to VFR traffic, even when ATC 0 happens. So for business aviation, flying VFR must be part of contingency planning, the experts said.
Right, that's interesting. And what you're describing there, I mean, that all sounds like activity that would increase the pilot workload, that would make pilots in some cases have to go back to, a somewhat old school way of doing things, but they clearly have to be ready for it. And one thing it occurs to me that might have to factor into the planning is fuel loads. If you're operating in an environment where one of these situations could pop up, presumably you have to consider that when you're planning how much fuel, so that if you had to divert, that would not be an issue.
Exactly, Charlie. There have been cases recently where traffic was diverted just before reaching the terminal environment. So here's what the experts at the NBAA said. Make sure you are fueled for your alternate, but also that you might be diverted outside of the local or even center airspace. Think about that if you're traveling somewhere where there's a potential for the facility to be impacted.
Yeah. And, you mentioned that it's perfectly possible to keep on operating under VFR rules, but if you end up in an ATC 0 situation, does that mean that you're as an operator, you're going to be restricted in your ability to fly IFR in those conditions?
It all depends on the staffing at the ATC facilities. IFR flying could be restricted if a significant number of controllers and support personnel are not able to work. So while other FAA facilities are able to take up the slack, there could be ground stops and even airborne diversions. And that's why the NBAA experts recommend advanced preparation, including carrying extra fuel.
Mm-hmm. Good point. So you mentioned 9/11. You mentioned that terrible period of time of a week or so when, the airspace was completely shut. We do hear rumors, I think it's fair to say, in the current environment of people saying, gosh, what if all domestic flying gets shut down in the US? What's your take on, is that something we need to be considering? Is it probable? How much of a factor could that be?
Charlie, every day it seems that a new rumor pops up on Facebook and even on some prominent news websites claiming that any day now the president is going to shut down the national airspace in the U.S. However, the NBAA experts assure us that this is unlikely. While there have been some ATC 0 events or closures of air traffic control facilities or elements in those facilities due to COVID-19, the ATC system in the US is robust and has many backups. And the FAA administrator has said that there is no ongoing discussion about a national airspace shutdown. In any case, there has been a significant decline in flying, so that is offset by the situation at the air traffic control facilities. It basically means the system is fairly well staffed, given the low volumes of traffic.
Yeah, good point. So one of the pluses is the system is hardly overloaded at the moment. So if there is some diminished capacity, maybe not such an issue as it could have been. Okay, Matt, you've filled in many of the gaps there for us. And what's clear is that the business aviation community, as it always has to be, is to be ready for any changes to normal routines, to be flexible. And of course, to achieve that, you have to have the very latest information. Well, you can count on us here at AIN to follow this topic and all the others that relate to it, and we'll provide all the information that matters most to business aviation. Please look out for more of these videos, and thanks for watching this one.
Thanks for watching this AIN video. Please like, subscribe, and share it if you've enjoyed it. Also, visit AINonline.com for all the latest on the aviation industry.